Greetings, greetings, greetings. You are now tuned into the Vault. Trust Christian, own nothing, control everything. Just want to thank you for tuning in live, listening to replay. Always appreciate everybody that tunes in live, listens in the replay. This is the Vault. It's a special guest episode. Actually, I have an interview with a private investment securities lawyer. It's one of those individuals. We were honored to have this interview because they have a bunch of letters behind their name, and they actually are achievements and accomplishments. Got quite a bit of status here behind their name because they have done some major achievements, and look forward to you all actually watching this episode. You can feel free to reach out Christian at trustchristian.com. That's the actual email. We do private consultations and we work with people privately. So I look forward to your feedback actually on this episode through the email and getting access to people such as this for private trustee training. So definitely look forward to it. And once again, the feedback from this episode Christian at trustchristian.com. Peace. Enjoy.
Greetings, greetings, greetings. You are now tuned into the Vault. Trust Christian, own nothing, control everything. Just want to thank you for tuning in live, listening to replay. We know a bunch of people are obviously going to listen to this in the replay. So we always appreciate you for tuning in live, listening to replay. And here we are, the Vault. This is a special episode. We definitely wanted to connect with this person and share somebody that we've built a relationship with and started building a relationship with in the private sector. And it's interesting because we always talk about the private on this channel, but you are like that person. Like if we could find anyone in the public that could talk about things and like say, hey, I want you to keep your privacy while you're doing these things, we're talking to the right person. So today we have Levon Idolet on the line. Thank you for coming on, Levon. How are you today?
I am wonderful. How about you?
I'm doing great. I'm always good to have good energy on the mic with us today. So I definitely appreciate you, taking out some time here, and definitely want to talk about what you offer and talk about what really is in the private sector. A lot of people are still we go to public school. Unless you go to a private school, there's this financial education, this private education, and something you said yesterday. How many people have learned to employ their money as opposed to make their money? So we definitely want to talk about many and various things, but Levon Adelet, I don't want to say ex-Olympic athlete. I just want to say Olympic athlete
That's
who's
just
that.
once you're an Olympian, always an Olympian.
There you go. I exactly. When you have that on your name, OLY, everyone knows that knows. So Olympic athlete moved into. You talked about mortgage brokering yesterday. You talked about being even a securities lawyer. Um, Various different things. How you've evolved. Could you possibly talk about maybe if you want to talk about maybe slightly a little bit of childhood and being into trust, being in the foundation, and then going to school, and then what led you just to say, I got to get into what's called the private as opposed to staying in the public, possibly even being a lawyer in the public if you could.
Yeah, yeah. So I was very much raised in the what most people would consider to be that true Robert Kiyosaki rich dad poor dad scenario, where like my father and his family are in the real estate business. My grandfather owns orange groves. My dad is a developer, but I didn't grow up with him. Um, well, I knew him. He was around. I visited every summer, but it was very much like I lived in Virginia with my mother and my stepfather, who are also successful. Like they are what people would consider to be the American dream. They make good money. They work for them. Well, my mother worked for herself when I was a child, and my stepfather has worked his way up into corporate management. And so I was sort of in that like pull of the way that you look at the world, the way that you navigate money. Um, when I got to college, I wanted to be a doctor, and that quickly changed. Well, not quickly, because 3 semesters I was in biology pre med. And then I started to realize, partially by the pushing of my father, who thinks he's the brain and that I'm Pinky, that everything is a business. If you learn how businesses work, you can do anything. And so the doctor who controls his own destiny understands the business of medical. versus the doctor who just treats patients. And
Right.
so the doctor who just treats patients has a love for a thing, but his progress in the business world will be slower. So I got that bite, ended up really loving it. And I had a teacher tell me I should go get an MBA JD, which I had no idea what that meant. And so I was like, all right, cool. I'm going to look into it. But I knew I didn't want to be a lawyer. So I I happen to have been blessed with the ability to be a nerd who happens to be fast. So I moved to Florida to go to graduate school and to train for the Olympics. And so I was a consummate student athlete the entire time. I went to law school and the Olympics at the exact same time,
Wow.
uh, and started a few companies in the interim of that.
Mm-hmm.
What I learned a lot in that time frame, though, so I felt like I was very smart, but what was happening was there is a big difference between education and experience. Life experience is going to teach you farther than education, but education can supercharge you if you also have experiences.
Mm-hmm.
So, what I learned in that, though, is that America is a litigious place,
Mm-hmm.
and thing that's in public
Mm-hmm.
will get people to bother you for no reason. So that's when I started diving deeper into asset protection, privacy structures, why we should use trust, why we should use land trust to transfer property, things like that. Um, and so, yeah, I became passionate about sharing that, and opportunities to give your money a job started to come up when I started going to these like alternative investment conferences. People were talking about these like huge deals with such like calmness that I'm sort of like, wait, how is it possible that you only do $80 million deals? Like, that doesn't even make sense.
Mm-hmm.
And the way that they talked about it and bring people's money together, and how you were just basically giving one person a job, creating this asset and like sending it out to work, and it brung you back a check that you never had to work for. And so I got super interested in that, and that's sort of how I transitioned from bankruptcy law land use to really being all in with securities, creating fund syndications, and then helping high income earners figure out how to assess deals that they get, but also how to access deals. Because the biggest problem that we have in this country is it's very much a haves and haves not. Who who knows who matters more than anything? So the biggest funds don't need your individual money because they already got your money. It's in pension funds. It's in, the 401ks. That money is being given out to fund managers, so you don't get to pick and choose for yourself. And so it made me become very passionate about sharing how to get access to these deals, how to be an asset to other people by bringing them capital plus something else. And then that you now having control and understanding what's going on, so that you can say, like, you feel confident that when you put your money out there, it's going to come back, and it's going to come back with money babies.
Good deal. And I'll let you keep going with that. So what is, and as you were wrapping up there, I was like, so what is your long-term goal, or something that you would say is like, okay, this is the impact or vision I see for myself and, leaving in the marketplace.
Yeah, so my biggest goal is like being the catalyst to inclusive capital. So
Mm,
I make a lot of wealthy people really wealthy, more wealthy, because I just keep their money in play. And so making your first million may be hard, but if you put it in the right places, making your next million is inevitable.
mhm.
And so the biggest thing for me is going out, speaking to more people, having them get into the conversations to have their money work, but also not just being a rich person who invests, but being a rich person who knows why they're investing in certain things. So creating that more sophisticated investor, but also getting them more access. So my goal for this year is 1,015 new investors who have never invested in a private placement. And so the impact of that being that if you get your money enough jobs, that your grandkids never have to worry about things, which will have an impact on probably millions of people from that 1,015.
Wow. And it's always good to have people cast a vision. Some people are afraid to set goals. And this is interesting how we're having this conversation. So talk about networking. You were just talking about it. Remember that
Yeah.
story?
So the biggest thing about networking, number one, is just like your network is your net worth is such a like cliche thing, but
Mm-hmm.
like I've been spoken up into more opportunities from a person who I've met randomly
Mm-hmm.
than any opportunity that I could have created for myself, mainly because I work from home now,
Mm-hmm.
you know. So the more it's not important who you know, it's more about who knows you and who knows what you actually do and what kind of value you can bring. Because then when someone's having a conversation about a thing, they'll be like, oh, I know somebody.
Mm-hmm.
And they're gonna put the pieces together. And typically if you can execute on it, you will be creating these opportunities that really grow your business or your investment future so much. So, for instance, I met Christian really what I would consider to be on a humbug.
Mm-hmm.
I was at the Family Office Super Summit to be a speaker on investment criteria. And, I'm just walking around meeting people. Christian walks up to me. He introduces himself, tells me what to do. And I'm like, oh my goodness, like that's so interesting. I'm really into that. We definitely have synergy. We have to do something together. And we've been building ever since. And so a happenstance 30-minute conversation turned into an actual friendship. So, you know what I'm saying? Like literally, for me, it's more important that you go out and build relationships than be transactional with people and just look for your next sale. It's about like, how can you add value to them? And then, because when you're a person who sows seeds into the world, flowers come back to you. It might not be from that tree.
Yeah. And I think sometimes, I was listening to something earlier about Earl Nightingale, and it is important to understand that, you have to sow before you reap, and you don't always get the harvest back from where you're sowing, so it is kind of challenging as a capital raiser to do that. And I just appreciate you, talking about what you talked about so far, even introducing yourself, and really sharing, what your offering is, and things of that nature. So I want to ask a few questions. This is something that we talked about throughout the times and conversations that we had. Let's just start out with, how is it, or what is it like for a woman in the industry from your experience, and talk about that from the perspective of when you started raising capital, and getting into that world, and how it's almost changed and where it's at now, and what you almost see for the future for women in capital raising in the industry that you're in as well, because you're in actually multiple vectors too. You're not in just one.
Yeah. So I would say that number one, uh, I may not be the best person to speak on how women are perceived in the marketplace. Number one, okay, I do know that like there is a there is a factor called attractiveness. So the more attractive you are to others, the more you'll be invited to have more conversations, whatever. So, and the reason they invite you in doesn't matter. When you
Right.
need to get in and get to the business. And then people create their own boundaries based on how you behave. So you just have to keep them on point and it'll be fine. But like the number one thing I can tell you is being a Black woman, being Black, being a woman who goes into these alternative investment spaces, goes into these finance meetings, it goes into these real estate rooms. People think I'm a rock star because they're like, how do you know about this stuff?
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm,
They're going to go out of their way to walk over and find out who I am, what I'm doing. And then a lot of times, the people who have good confidence, they're like, how can I help you?
mm-hmm,
Like, I want to be a part of this rock star movement. And so I would tell women all the time, you can get into rooms that men cannot because men typically do not know how to take each other. If
mm-hmm,
they feel like each of them is strong, it's sort of like they'll spend 45 minutes on the quote unquote dick measuring contest, uh, as opposed to getting to the business and how they can help each other. So you have that advantage of not having to measure. You can just come in and say, hey, these are the things that I can do. What are you doing? How can I add value to you? And move forward. And it's a much less contentious thing. So I
mm-hmm,
think there's a great space for that. There's also, but I think the one thing that is sort of a hindrance, you sort of got to be, and I hate to say like the cool chick, but like the truth is, it's like men are afraid of women right now
Mm,
because of Me Too movements and all that. And that's not to say that men's behavior wasn't ridiculous at some point, but it's more about like the confidence that you exude, how you let them treat you, and checking them on first gate. So not letting people feel comfortable enough to continuously like come at you, but also not being so like stuffy that they feel like we can't even make jokes around you because you're gonna like tell people that I'm a bad person. So they make a joke at you, make a joke back, and you'll keep it moving in a much easier way. Take life more lightly.
it's one of those things. Obviously, if you're sitting in a room with women and they're curious on how to get in the industry, they do need to hear how to handle those small situations, such as the jokes.
Hmm.
We walk into these environments that are new, and
Hmm.
when you get into them, if whether it's uncomfortable or not, you have to get comfortable. And that does require, like you say, maybe lightening up your sense of humor. Many different things that you have to do now to add to your personality type. If it's dry, or being, I was trained where, like, yes, I have whiskey aficionado magazines. I have cigar aficionado magazines. Like, I may not do those things, but I have the ability to have the conversations with people that engage in those activities. Whether it's certain types of alcohol. Those are things that wines. When people are collecting wines, these are assets. You're talking to wealthy people or people of that mindset that, yeah, they know about those things. So it does add to the conversation. So I know you could go on that conversation forever about people skills and how to
Hmm.
operate in these environments. And it's not necessarily gender specific, but there is a gender barrier as a difference, and we're different, and we need to actually have those open, candid conversations about the difference. And in turn, that will enable us to build familiarity, in the environment. Go ahead.
I said, and be okay with the difference.
Mhm.
It's just, I am not the person who's like, you should walk on eggshells because you are of different races. Yeah, we're different. It's fine. And some of that stuff is true and some of it is funny. And we can talk about it, joke about it, and move on. We are not defining ourselves by generalizations, anyways. And so if we just can say, like, do I love Otto California? Of course. Okay. Do I? Of course. Now, like, so you know what I'm saying? Just being able to like keep it light, I think allows you to build relationships with people. And then when you are actually friends, you can have deeper conversations about how their behavior looks to other people who don't know them, and like the generalizations that you create in your head, because we all have implicit biases based on how we were raised and things that have happened to us in our lives. And we're all mostly ignorant to the fact that they're biases. They just exist. And you're just like, I didn't realize, like me, young kids, like if I'm walking on the street by myself and I see people who are like young 20s teens, I'm crossing the street. I'm not trying to figure out if they're good people or not. And that is a bias that I have against young people who, like, I know they're trying to like find themselves. It's no knock on y'all, but y'all gonna have to do it over there.
Exactly. Exactly. It's just, and it's interesting because I could say that's an American thing. Not only, but it's an American thing. It's in the culture now where older people will not walk on that side of the street, straight up. And that whether it's biased or not, it is what it is. So, um, how is the marketplace for capital raising privately? And obviously, that's pretty general, but I definitely want you to talk about some of the things you've seen go through, and even some of the things maybe that didn't go through. But how is, capital raising privately versus public, and why
Uh,
private?
yeah, so the reason why I like private structures is because it doesn't ebb and flow with the value doesn't ebb and flow based on news. So what is going on within that company, the net operating income is what it is, and the value that you have in that company is what it is. It doesn't fluctuate with what's going on in the market, what's going on with people, what's going on in the company, what's going on with the CEO. So that's why I have a little bit of, I lean towards private opportunities for that reason. But also, It depends on how much money you're raising. So if you look at things from a macro scale, people would say money's drying up. People are not investing as fast as they used to. But those are people who are raising billions of dollars. So you can't compare that to like you are buying a storage complex in South Florida that costs a few $1 million and you're raising $1 million. You can still do that just as fast as you ever have if you are reaching out to the right type of investor, having the right conversations. Because on a micro scale, if you're only raising $1 million and you just need 10 people to say yes, there is a market pool of close to 25 million people in America who can invest in that type of investment. So to get a 0.00001 of that to say yes to you is a function of hustle. And that's why I've been super passionate about getting more people into the space of raising capital for what they're trying to do, as opposed to like waiting for banks to say yes to them, waiting for venture capital funds to say yes to them, because there's way more capital and there's way more at bats if you just go and do it individually.
It's interesting because when you were talking yesterday, I didn't even think about securities agent. Obviously, you have a securities license. You might want to even share, why securities license. But I was like, man, I didn't think about securities license. Actually, people, I know doctors, lawyers have money. It's like securities license people might know a little bit about something. They might have a little bit of money. I mean, there's a few different professions that like they're solidly going to have savings and wanting to invest money. And then when you talked about that, even just now, like 25 million people are available for small micro 25K, 50K investment, 100K investment if they have had that over a period of time. So it's good to hear that that's wide open. But somebody comes to you and they say, hey, I want to start a nail salon. Are they raising capital in the private sector, or are they still going to go commercial lending?
For an individual nail salon, I mean, so small businesses are going to do better than startups, if that makes sense, just not from a venture standpoint.
Okay.
So you won't get venture capital for a nail startup, but for a nail shop, because it doesn't have the potential to give you a huge multiple in the future. But for a micro level, if you just model it out and say, hey, I need $100,000 to start this business. This business can generate $400,000 a year. Do you take on debt? Do you take on equity? I think that comes down to the model. But most likely, if you just took it as debt, that 100,000, you could probably pay that off in 5 years and keep all of the equity in your company. But you can raise that rather than have to figure out how to make yourself bankable enough for the guidelines that they create, which you may not know because there are overlays at every single bank. Although SBA is always a great option for a small business. You only have to put 10% down, but typically you do have to have some other kind of collateral.
Yeah.
So it's making yourself bankable may take longer than just going out and meeting people, getting your legal documents together and raising that from 5 or 6 people and being able to have them be a part of a movement in a community. So I like local businesses raising locally because it helps people get buy-in.
What would you say? I was listening to you and I had a question that came up. But nevertheless, we'll keep going because I definitely appreciate you talking about raising the money on a micro level and doing that locally. That's important for people. They have issues with small ideas and then not finding the capital. And obviously some people don't even know what equity is, so they don't know that they could possibly sell equity of their dream as opposed to having to pay debt back with a specific interest rate and things of that nature. Yeah, hopefully I remember my question, but I'm gonna go to the next question. So just,
So let's make a little quick statement on that though. The reason that you take equity investors over debt investors is because debt has an obligation to be paid back. Equity investors are paid as you prosper. So they are in it, win or lose with you. And so you can take a little bit more time to get back to the point where you're cash flowing enough to give them payments. So that's why I look at both of them in equal buckets and say, okay, times you may want to take debt. Sometimes you may want to take equity depending on what your cash flow looks like. And so having an equity partner gives you somebody who has their skin in the game, who's with you win or lose. Debt partners are like, whether you win or not, bring me a check.
It's interesting because obviously a lot of people don't know what equity is. It's like a mysterious thing. They don't know that debt and equity, like you say, are in the same bucket, and you have to pick and choose when you're going to use that tool. So that's why I was actually going to go into the next question about the COLI and the BOLI bank-owned life insurance. Or do you have any clients that have utilized bank-owned life insurance premium financing, and what's your thoughts on it?
Yeah, so I am a big fan of life insurance products in general
Okay.
as a place to a store of money, if you will.
Hmm.
Part of it being that on the one side, like all the key people in your business, I think you should own a policy on them that the business pays for,
Hmm.
just something happens, but it gives you guys a place to, well, number one, you can use it as some deferred compensation. That's how you get really, really good talent to come with you. On the other hand, though, some people have novel skills that it's going to take 2 or 3 people to replace them if something was to happen to them. So you definitely want to have that. But then the other side of that is it's a store of value. So you put it in some place that is going to make 4 and some change percent a year, and you can borrow, the business can borrow against it because it owns the policy, and use that as a way to grow the business and things like that. And so I think it has a lot of value. I also think premium financing can be interesting, but it's more about the plan. So the plan has to be what, if you're going to get, so premium financing means that you're going to use the capital that you would have put into premiums to pay a loan back instead.
Hmm.
And that loan will be for a significant value. So now you have all of this cash value in this policy. But if you don't have a plan per se on what you intend to do with that capital to turn it into more capital or like expand your business, I think it can be sort of taking on too much risk for no reason.
Right.
Um, because you just don't need a bunch of money just sitting around. If you have a plan that's like, all right, I know that I can take this 100,000 and I can use that for payments towards a loan for $1 million. I take that $1 million and put it into this insurance policy. Now I have something that I can borrow a significant amount of money to buy things with, and I can make arbitrage that to make me astronomically more than both of these monies cost, worth it every time.
Yeah, and it's interesting because that reason why I brought that up is because you talked about being bankable,
Mhm.
and if somebody has a company, well, it maybe they only have, maybe they're a sole prop, but they're like, you want to, it's okay to have insurance on yourself, even as a sole property with if you have a structure there, LLC or C corp, because yes, it does provide where, hey, somebody might be able to come in here and help out if you go down for terminal situations or medical situations. There's some money that can come in and help out. And it's so interesting to know how many entrepreneurs still to this day don't know about Keyman, let alone, Keyman insurance, or don't have it, and they
Yeah,
have over $500,000 revenue in business plus, so
yeah.
um
I think
yeah.
that's important, especially for succession planning. Um, because I'm in a family business, we talk about succession planning all the time.
Yeah.
Because, although my father thinks he is invincible man, he is 61. So, the average lifespan of Black men is actually not that long, although my grandfather's 89 and my
Okay.
father, like, we don't go by those rules, but at
Right,
the
right,
same,
right.
you always want to be prepared so you don't have to get prepared. So
Okay.
I'm planning for worst case scenarios, not, and then happy when they don't happen.
Right. So even talk about that, like, because we talk about trust on this channel. We do talk about private family foundations. Talk about, if obviously it's private, but could you share disciplines, best practices, thought processes, things that you may or may not talk inside of meetings that you would say to someone else, even starting a family office or starting trusteeship or starting, in a charity such as the Private Family Foundation?
Yeah, I think that the biggest thing is creating the space where everybody talks about money
Okay.
and how much money they're making, what their goals are, how working together as a family can supercharge that. Everybody reaching their goals faster as it pertains to where you live, how you guys communicate together and are able to do things together. And so just the disciplines of starting off even small. So when we began our like investment group as a family, it was just everybody has to put in $1,000 a month. And that's the people, everybody below a certain point were like, they work regular jobs. So they don't necessarily, like $1,000 was sort of a stretch for some people above what their bills were and the things they wanted to do, but they were disciplined and they really hustled and got it in there, so that at a certain point when they were like, okay, I think I'm ready and I want to do a decorating business, like one of my aunts or whatever. And so, but we have stored value. Everybody has insurance we have insurance on every person in the family. So now we have all of this value that's come together, and you don't have to go to a bank to start this business. It only costs $25,000 anyways. And you pay the money back, obviously, because stealing from your own bank is stealing nonetheless. And you're in with something that doesn't balance. But also putting all of that together and making people all be accountable to it helps them understand that, like, you can't just be a taker from the family. And I think that that's important as well. So even from the smallest people being parts of your family foundation, where you go out and you pick the charities you're going to invest in and have them volunteer there and have them be a part of that grant making, I think it all has a lot of value to, like, teaching the children to be great stewards of money, to be great people on top of, just making money.
I know we could talk about it forever, best practices when it comes to it. And I appreciate you talking about that yesterday, because in business is really about the management. Because you even talk about that, just even when you said that yesterday, like, it's about finding great operators. And clearly that immediately made me think of the E-Myth. You've read that, right?
Yep.
Yeah. It makes me think about that.
So right person, right seat is the most important thing you can ever do. Meaning you need to find the people who enjoy the thing and do the thing well. A lot of people enjoy stuff that they don't do well. So you have to, like, put measures in and accountabilities for what your expectations are in terms of operation. So the real reason why most small businesses fail is because everybody believes that, like, they're the best person to do a thing, and, like, nobody else can do the thing like them. Doesn't matter what it is. It could be like you make cheesesteaks and you don't want to teach nobody else because you think you're the best steak maker and they're gonna mess it up. And the problem with that is like, okay, you have a great operation, but the operation is based on one person. And that is good because they're going to be accountable and they're going to be making it work. But at some point, that's not a real business. That's them being, you own your job. That's fine. But you want to get it to the point where even if you are investing with other people, you need to, like, the biggest risk that you're going to have is, what is their actual plan and systems that they have in place that makes the operations operate regardless if they are there or not. So, like, I am an investor in one public stock, and it's Berkshire Hathaway. And when I go to their annual meetings, the one risk that they have in their 10K every single time is Warren Buffett is 91 and Charlie Munger is 95. Like, that is real risk. Although they are of same mind, those are the only two people actually making decisions there. They got 25 other employees who do tasks. But the one thing that their business actually does is they invest in other businesses and they don't interrupt the flow of those businesses. So the truth is, the value of the business will stay the same whether they died or not.
That's what we would like to think. And then, yeah. So it's interesting to hear you say that. Do you went Class A or Class B?
A, because I didn't know that B was a thing that you could go to the meeting with. because I just wanted to go to the meeting. So
I just wanted to go to the meeting, so I got B. All right, we just need to get B. I'll see you there. You know what I mean? Seriously, that's actually a sleeper thing for the culture of people saying that they want to be around the best. I mean, for a small buy-in to go and associate with obviously people even such as yourself. I mean, just talk about that briefly. You know, what made you think that? With me, I mean, obviously, Class A was a heavy investment there, so I don't know when you got in, but you know,
it
yeah.
was
So
it was heavy, but it's doubled in value since I bought it.
awesome.
And the real reason was because I saw the documentary called Becoming Warren. I already knew a little bit about him. I thought it was a great documentary, just like talking about things. Then I met his granddaughter. She runs a family office. So she's always at these like family office events. And I'm like, I have to come to this, like, because it looked like a carnival. So I go out to Omaha for a week and it's amazing. But the best part about it was that the people that I met while I was there were people who were like, I invested with Warren in the 70s or the
Wow.
80s because I was one of his daughter's roommates, or I met him at like a congressional hearing in DC. And so these people became wealthy basically off of investing laterally, which was huge for me to see
Mm-hmm.
because we tend to want to meet the person who's already doing the thing, who's already amazing. One of the things that Warren Buffett said at one of the meetings was just like, there's an assumption that bigger is better. However, my best performing fund was my first fund. I raised $100,000. I put in $100, and the returns there were 500%. You can't do that with $1 billion. Like, it's impossible.
Yeah.
So, because the way that you're moving the money
Mm-hmm.
is too big to not be noticed. But when
Mm-hmm.
you do it something on a micro level,
Mm-hmm.
you should be investing laterally, meaning
Mm-hmm.
with people who you really know and trust as great operators. And so, like, that's where all of what I talk about now came from, because the people who invested in Berkshire when it was in the 70s were buying in for $100, $200. The stock was super cheap. And like, he wasn't the Warren Buffett who's out and everybody knows him as the most wealthy man in the world. He was a guy who makes money. He might have made $1 million by then, but like, do you know how many people you know who make $1 million right now that you've never considered investing with? Those are the people that you need to be like aligning yourself with, like, yo, so you raising money? Cool. Let me take my money. Somebody, one of them may turn into the future um what's his name, Jeff Bezos, or Warren Buffett.
That is true. And I want you to talk about, what we actually talked about yesterday, because this is we're going to end on this, but I want you to talk about this because you do have a education in this, which is dealing with unregistered securities, dealing with people that have gotten burned. You've met people, obviously you have clients that have lost they lost millions off the rip. The first one, million gone. That's a hard accident. Hey, you lose 10,000, it's like, all right, I guess and that's actually relative to based off how much you have and make. But could you talk about the importance of finding quality managers, and you even talked about it yesterday about how financial advisors may or may not want to educate the clients and how that distinguishes you, and what you're providing in the marketplace, when it comes to obviously investments and unregistered more so than public offerings.
Yeah, so on the one hand, most people who advise you on money will only sell you things they make money on. So you need to be aware of that from the jump. Number two is, the more educated you become, the more you want to make your own decisions, which means you take money out of their hands. So they're going to discourage this. It's human nature. They don't mean, they mean well, because they're like, I know better and I want to help keep you safe. But the other thing is, like, we all have our own biases in finance. So people like what they like. I happen to be asset agnostic. Like, I don't care what it is per se. I'm more attracted to great operators as opposed to like I don't care if it's multifamily or a business. It could be whatever, but the operator is the person who's going to like get you to the goals. And so unregistered securities. The reason why I'm super into them is because exempt offerings below $100 million are not registered with the SEC. You have disclosures and things like that you file, but the real reason why I prefer them over registered securities, even if they are private offerings, is because number one, it's giving access to capital and opportunities to people who historically probably aren't coming from finance, right? So it's not institutional grade, but they're typically hungrier and they're not already so rich that they only care about collecting their fees and moving on. So the more money I see a person has under management, the less likely I am to want to invest with them, because I understand that how human nature really works. So your hungry person is going to hustle, do their best to bring you back oversized returns and make sure that you are super happy. Once you get to the point that you have $1 billion under management, what you're going to say is, they're saying to you is, you should be happy to know me. You should be happy I let you in here. And you're going to give me a 2% fee before I ever do anything for you.
Right.
And you'll get what you'll get on the other side. And it's such a non-hustle experience. They'll just try to talk you into why it should be okay that you get a 4% return back, even though Treasury bonds is giving 4.7. It don't even make no sense.
Well, that's why I wanted to ask you about the non-registered REIT, because I was like, well, if I think it looks good to investors that you are forced to pay a dividend or forced to pay out cash. And obviously, if you're paying out cash, that means you should be doing something right. Would you agree?
To a point. So the reason why I don't like them is only because only a person who is an operator who runs that business will really understand what it takes to keep something afloat when things are not all going perfect. So in a perfect world, the way you modeled it out, it may look perfect that you give out your 10% every year and it all, but as you know, people be doing people things. So let's say we're talking multifamily. Right now, everybody's having a collection issue. So as opposed to 5% not paying by the 5th, they're having 25% not paid by the 5th, and 50% of those people don't pay by the 20th. And then you have a backlog of evictions. So if you end up in a situation where your cash is not coming in the cycle in which you have prepared for, you can put yourself into a sticky situation by being forced to give dividends.
And I always love hearing people that obviously, like you say, either have experience or education. Anybody can say they want to do something because it looks good on paper, but it's different when you have experience in down markets in real estate, which most people haven't experienced in a while. And we don't know if it's going to be that bad as it's been in the past. So when you do talk about benefiting in the downside as well as the upside, that's what a great pro does. They benefit in the downside and the upside. So I definitely appreciate you taking time out the day right now to come on and actually do this interview with me. I appreciate the synergy that we have and would love to do more, because there's a lot of value that you present to an audience in a segment, like you say, that you are able to offer unregistered securities to and private offerings in a manner in which they're going to be protected, and they know coming to you they're going to be protected. So Levon, if you would love to give any contact information out, we're going to put it in the description as well. But I know that a lot of people want to contact you for who you are and what you do bring to the table, and I appreciate that.
Yeah, so if you want to connect with me, the easiest way is to send me a DM on Instagram, which is Lala Hurdles 2, LALAHURDLES, and the number 2. If you want more information about private placement offerings, because you're an accredited investor and looking for a place to give your money a job, just send me a message about that. If you are a person who's looking to raise capital and you're looking for structure and how to do it compliantly, safely, and fast, send me a message about that. You can also connect with me on LinkedIn. My name is Levon Idolette. I'm pretty active over there. I'm also active on Twitter. That's my jam. I feel like I give the most value over there. So it's Idolette. At Idolette is over there. And then my website is Lala Hurdles 2. And I look forward to connecting with you. I actually do have a private passive investor masterclass coming up. It is free. It's going to be on March 15th at 5 p.m. So if you are a high income earner or have a pretty high net worth, or you have securities licenses and you are looking for ways to give your money a job, but you want to know how to assess those deals better, assess people better, make goals, and figure out how to reach those goals within a reasonable time frame, that's where you should be. I'll send you the link so that you could put it in the description, and let's go.
Thank you
I
so much. Appreciate you, Levon. I thank you so much.
Appreciate everybody for tuning in live, listening to replay. This was one of those episodes we were definitely excited about bringing to you all in trusteeship. And, this is obviously something we had to bring out, the vault. And we're just happy that we were able to bring that content to you all in this particular episode. Once again, Christian at trustchristian.com. It's interesting, we sat here and we had conversations and done things with, that individual. And then when it comes down to it, these individuals they're very humble. When you get in contact with these individuals and you do want to present value, and it's just exciting to be able to present value, and that's the most important thing. So very excited about what we were able to bring today. Uh, and look forward to continue to bring that content to you all. Once again, that's Christian at trustchristian.com. Trustee training is definitely in full swing, and we're actually seeing and working on actually doing something with Levon, which is awesome because it's really about being able to, obviously money likes money. So, that's how that goes. So, Christian at trustchristian.com. Once again, that's Christian at trustchristian.com for trustee training. And then obviously sharing more help on how to work with someone such as her, because she is a whale, not literally, but well, figuratively in finance. When you're dealing with someone of that caliber, we have no problem with calling out whales. Their numbers speak for themselves. Their track record speaks for themselves. So the only thing is to actually find out how to add value. So appreciate everybody for tuning live, listening to replay. Once again, appreciate everybody for tuning